situations. So the first one that I will demonstrate will be a flat foot motion landing, so where we land basically literally with the foot completely touching the ground, all at the same time. So we will hit the ball of the foot and the heel at the same time, creating a landing that is creating a flat foot landing. The second one instead will see us landing with the ball of the foot first and the heel later, which is substantially different for two main reasons. One is the power, how we generate the power. Second is going to be the speed. So when do we use the flat foot technique? We will use it when we will play a one single stroke and we want a lot of power. The flat foot landing, it's equal to the Moeller technique for our hands, where there's a whipping motion created and that generates the energy and the power. So we will do like, there's a up motion and then there's a landing that creates a whipping motion because it lands with a flat foot. And there's a little bit of tension that we put to raise the foot before the landing and landing with a flat foot. And this technique will allow us to have very powerful strokes. If you're right-footed, you might feel this more with your left foot, where if you try to have a lot of power in the stroke, you might find yourself having to push a lot with your leg, so have an explosive power of the leg, but you will feel a lot of tension with still little result or not a lot of result, while having this whipping motion, the fact of landing with a flat foot will give you that extra power and that extra snap at the end of the stroke, which will be the one that will generate all the motion. I always compare this to throwing a rock. If we throw a rock with the explosive power, so from here to forward, we will use a lot of explosive power, a lot of energy for little result. But if we use a whipping motion, so a technique with zero or very little energy, effort, we will have a very good result. And this is because of this whipping motion and a little snap at the end where we throw the rock. It's the same principle applied, well, to the Moeller, first of all, and we are just repeating this on the pedal. So with this one, we will have very powerful stroke. But what happens when we start speeding up this? It's that this little tension to create the whipping motion, as we increase the speed, it will become too much. It will get in the way of the deactivation of the muscle of the legs. So it will keep us constantly contracted and we will start feeling a lot of tension in the leg. So here is where we have to switch to the second approach to the leg motion, which is the constant leg motion, which will allow us to keep the ankle relaxed. And so without that extra tension that we are doing every time, that we would do every time with the flat foot landing, it will help us to keep the leg deactivated. And so we can start increase the speed more without feeling all that tension. So the key is to keep the ankle relaxed so that we don't have a constant contraction of the leg, which will force us to kind of like stress the hip flexor area way more than what we could and what we should. So the energy and the power in this case will be created from the constant motion of the pedal rather than from the actual motion itself. So if we try to use this approach for very slow strokes, we will find ourselves having very little power and we will have to push a lot with our leg, using a lot of the explosive motion. So it's important already at this time to understand when are we using the flat foot landing, the flat foot approach, and when are we using the constant leg motion approach, and why. Okay, so the flat foot landing allows us to have a lot of power generated from the whipping motion between the leg and the ankle, but as we speed it up, it will create too much tension. So we will switch into a constant leg motion, which instead will keep our legs relaxed and will allow us to still have a good power, more speed, and not stress our legs too much, not do too much of a physical effort, right? This will also, this type of approach, the constant leg motion, we can push it all the way to around 140, 150 BPM, so it will cover a lot of what I call the gray area, which is like all those range of BPMs where it's too fast for full leg motion, but it's too slow for ankle motion only. And so this type of approach of like keeping the ankle relaxed will allow us to kind of like have the motion is generated from the leg still, so it comes from the hip flexor area, but it will allow us to keep the ankle also relaxed and partially involved to cover all these speeds, like from I would say from 120, 130 all the way to 150, 160. Okay, from 160 on, I usually switch to full ankle motion or mostly ankle motion. So the motion there changes. We're not talking about the leg motion anymore. We go and switch the control to an ankle motion, which is not something I will cover today, but it's important that we understand how far can we push the speed so that we don't get confused and be like, oh, I thought I could use this at 180, 200 BPMs. No, at that point you will need to switch to ankle